May we all await the light with gladness. May our souls be still and let the season fall upon us. Let us truly understand the passage of time together. Let us share in the meaning of life.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the third Sunday of Advent. This was true. By the time we actually are recording this, it's well into the third week here, and we're about to hit the fourth Sunday. But we still wanted to kind of share with you the thoughts and um, the message that we had for our home church for the third Sunday in the third week. The third Sunday is known as Gaudete Sunday. It's the week to celebrate joy. The joy that comes into the world comes directly to us at Christmas time, this Christmas time. Now, our approach over these 4 weeks, if any of you have seen the videos that we've had the last couple, we've said this, we're trying to balance the competing but not necessarily oppositional ideas that this season either is a quiet time of reflection and faithful waiting, or a time of celebration and mirth and feasting and bright lights and warm fires. We want to try to balance both of those things and encourage both of them. And beyond that, we also seek to derive some inspiration from the Latin roots, the Latin root words that Advent shares with adventure. And this month, this season has been and will continue to be an adventure that we are sharing together.
The third light of Advent is the light of beasts. All await the birth, from the greatest to the least. When we think of animals, it's typically taken as a given that animals belong to the world of nature. And nature is good, right? Surely all of us have heard some frustrated person talking about how they like this animal or that animal better than people. Maybe we've even said it ourselves. More broadly and more universally, it's also taken as a given that the world of nature is pure and innocent, and that through civilization and perhaps inherent flaws, humanity exists outside of it, having left it behind. Our world is seen as fallen in contrast to the way things were meant to be. It's as though nature is Eden, and not only have we left it behind, but there's an angel with a flaming sword guarding it, barring forever our return. But this is not the only way of framing this world, and in fact, it might not even be the correct one. This is an idea I think both Chris and I were first introduced to through Terrence Malick's film The Tree of Life, but it's actually a very old idea in Christian theology, going back to St. Augustine, that perhaps it's not nature as opposed to man, but nature as opposed to grace. After all, only a cursory glance in nearly any direction will show you that there's nothing pure or innocent about the natural world. Nature is nasty and cruel, filled with pain and death, with senselessness and violence, and a whole lot of what we might describe as injustice. It's almost silly to claim that we're somehow worse than nature, or that we've left it behind, or that the laws of our civilization are somehow different or separate from the laws of nature. What comes into this world at Christmas is different than what can otherwise be found in the ways of the rocks, the ways of the plants, the ways of the animals, or our ways. Along with the light of the world that's born into the darkness, it's grace that's our present at Christmas. And that means not only are we shown that grace, but from that point forward, given the opportunity to share that grace and that light with everyone and everything around us.
Do You Hear What I Hear is one of my favorite Christmas songs. And, apologies if anyone watching this has heard me say this before, because I do tend to tell this story every Christmas time to anyone who will listen to me. And now you're my captive audience this year. This song was not written at Christmas time. It was written in October in 1962 in New York City in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was written by Noel Regney and Gloria Shane, who were living in New York City at the time, and facing in this crisis what seemed possibly like the certain death of themselves and everyone they had ever known. It's in this context that we can see the lyrics of the song. We talk about the star with a tail as big as a kite. Hear the song in the air with a voice as big as the sea. We hear this, and we see this imagery less associated with the wondrous nativity and perhaps more with, an intercontinental ballistic missile flying overhead and about to land. These were words, said the little lamb to the mighty king, said the night wind to the shepherd boy, etc., that came to Regni when he was thinking about this certain doom, and just saw babies being pushed in strollers in the street, Armageddon looming, all of this potentially about to be wiped off. That's heavy. And in fact, the two writers were never themselves able to perform their own song in its entirety. Like, so emotional was it for them. This tale of destruction and woe, of cruelty and violence and death and hatred, that's nature. That's normal in nature. The point of the song is that left on our own, without the coming of that child of grace, that we are completely doomed. This need for salvation has nothing at all to do with going to hell when you die or something like that. This is about the damnation and that threat of Armageddon that we face right now, all the time. Just as much as they did in 1962, when we are left on our own, we are left to natural ways. You can argue the point. Many do. You can say that humans can solve these human problems, that humans, in fact, were the ones who avoided nuclear war in 1962. But how sure are we of that? The truth is that at the time, neither Kennedy nor Khrushchev were certain that they could stop the people around them from starting the ultimate war. They're not here for us to ask them, but I think that if they were, I'm not sure that they would tell us that they were sure that it was humans that avoided this calamity. That this wasn't a miracle, that this wasn't an intervention of divine grace, and they were at the center of it. They were in theory the two most powerful people in the story, and I think that they would both still tell us that this was grace that spared us all. And that's what the song is about. The song's a prayer for peace that we can't guarantee on our own, that we don't seem to produce on our own, and we ask that it be granted to us anyway, that we be saved anyway. We often think of the kingdom of heaven, this thing that Jesus himself ended up talking about more than anything else in his ministry, as captured in the Gospels. We think of it as this far off place in another dimension, or something that happens after death, right? And even those who don't understand it in that way, who understand it as something that can be found here and can be found now, they too often try to create this kingdom of heaven either by imposing rigid codes of behavior on everybody, or, in some cases, many imagine that they can create this through, say, like federal government legislation.
But I don't think that's how grace works, or that any of those things actually represent what God wants, or what Jesus was talking about. Examining the last line of the song about the child, this stark conclusion that only this coming child will save us. Many of those who see Jesus' message as either death insurance, behavioral legalism, or oversimplified social justice would all criticize the emphasis on the child. They'd call it a cop-out. They'd say we're willfully focusing on a benign and unchallenging image of an infant rather than the radical martyr crucified Son of God that the baby would grow into. But this image need not be unchallenging, and it need not be a cop-out. Indeed, it might be the most challenging idea of all, because the coming of God as a helpless, ordinary child in poverty defies our notions of reason and human justice and so many other things. For that matter, it also doesn't fit neatly into what the Jews were actually looking for in a Messiah. They wanted a warlord who would lead a rebellion and kick out the Romans. As we mentioned in our Advent preview service the week before Thanksgiving, We're using a daily Advent devotional written by Father Richard Rohr as part of the basis of our explorations during these 4 Sundays. In his introduction, Rohr himself says, citing Franciscan belief, that human redemption does in fact come at Christmas, with this baby child, long before the teachings of death and resurrection or anything else, because by sending this baby to be born, God was saying that it was good to be human and that he was on our side. Jesus as an adult was actually very clear that the kingdom of heaven was not inaccessible, found only after death, neither in the future nor far away. In fact, he says it's all around us if we can only see.
This world is a world of nature, as true among the plants of the jungle, as among the wild animals of the savannas and the forests, as among humans in our cities, with our collective behaviors in our societies. And this is the quote we referenced earlier that opens the film, The Tree of Life. The nuns taught us there are two ways through life, the way of nature and the way of grace. You have to choose which one you'll follow. Grace doesn't try to please itself, accepts being slighted, forgotten, disliked, accepts insults and injuries. Nature only wants to please itself, get others to please it too, likes to lord it over them, to have its own way. It finds reasons to be unhappy when all the world is shining around it and love is smiling through all things. Rohr says one way to begin thinking in a way that better orients us towards this presumed alternative, towards this way of grace, towards the kingdom of heaven, is to ask ourselves when we think about what we're focusing on and where we're putting our energy and our time and our emotions, is to ask this question: in the light of eternity, will this matter? And when I look at people trying to fix this world, and well-meaning as that is, but trying to make the wrongs right, to eliminate the pain and the suffering and the imbalances, I see that for all eternity, such people and such efforts have existed. And yet, this world of nature, which might sometimes adjust in response at different times, and it might occasionally moderate for a while in response to these efforts, but the world of nature has marched on unabated. It has continued to dominate and has not fundamentally changed. And I question whether we're called to change it. In fact, if the kingdom of heaven is already here, always here, and all we need to do is see it, we should stop thinking of our task as one of forcibly bending the iron of this animal world until we replace it with the kingdom of heaven we have built in our stead. You know, in that attempt to forcibly implement our vision of grace, it's like we are replicating and perpetuating that way of nature in our attempt to replace nature with grace. I mean, that's the way of nature. And that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And when it comes to that kingdom of heaven that we need to build, why should we have to build something that's already here? How does that make sense? Is that consistent with what Jesus said about the kingdom of heaven? And this isn't to say that our position towards the world and its imbalances should be, it's what it is, and we stop there. I don't think that at all. But it is to suggest that the coming of a helpless child, like the work of the kingdom of heaven, is a matter of mysterious, unreasonable grace. It's not, I couldn't possibly offer specific formulas about how people should behave, and probably you don't know very many people who can. And neither of us can offer easy answers about what path to take to fix the world or what system to implement. And we're not trying to do that. That's not the goal here. Maybe instead, though, it is our job. If there's a kingdom of heaven out there in front of us right now, All of us, this is true, right? It's our job to shine the right kind of light so that we and those around us might be able to see that kingdom, to see that side of this world, to see that possibility for grace. We don't contribute any grace to this world by trying to defeat darkness in a fight. We do it by adding light to the world wherever we can, whenever we can, however we can. There isn't a recipe or a code or formula to doing that. It's just a way of living life. It's just a way of approaching moment after moment, and those moments then add up to the grand work of a lifetime. Some moments, the light that's needed is some well placed kindness. Other moments, it means celebrating special days with people you love, sharing rituals, forming traditions with them that make for everyone around the world more beautiful. In other moments, the light that's needed is the light of human creation, whether of music or art or storytelling. Many moments, it's things we do for other people for which we receive in return no real individual benefit.
No matter what we do, we can't make a world without doubt, or sadness, or injury, or despair. These aren't things we can simply hunt down like we might in nature. But every day, no matter how small the ways might be, there are means available to us to contribute or promote faith, joy, and gladness, forgiveness and freely given redress, and always hope. And we can always, as much as we are able in a given moment, show love to others. When you look for them, the opportunities are always there, however big or small. And when you take them, that's where you find this kingdom, this state of grace. It requires our effort, but it's not through our effort. It's only because this thing is already there that our efforts can bear fruit. That's what it means to need to be saved, to need for this child of light to come into the world. Because all of this is messed up in ways we absolutely cannot fix. And sometimes even our own lives seem irredeemable without some kind of help, some kind of intercession, without at least this existing and available light of grace. And the Christmas story is about the arrival of this grace into the world. The setting is Bethlehem, in modern day Palestine, in the 1st century AD, which seems very far away from the present and from our region. But the story takes place at the intersection between this world of nature, of animals, of civilization, and the simultaneously existing kingdom of heaven, the world of grace. The story is about a heavenly gift to us, the opportunity to access one as much as the other, for our world too exists at this intersection. We perceive linear time, but we live inside eternity. 1st century Palestine is the same moment as this one. It's all the same moment, and that child is always being born. Grace can't be possessed, it can't be understood, it can't be seized, and it can't be forged, but we can see it. We can accept it, open ourselves to it, and try to share it. The world is not a problem to be solved. It's just not the whole picture. The Christmas story means we're not bound to the natural world, the world of the animals, but can instead, all of us, follow the light of that star in the east and find ourselves guided to a stable to actually become fully human.
Happy Advent, everybody. Anybody who is watching this who is local who would like to join us for the conclusion of this 4-week Advent series, we are going to gather this Sunday. So, reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to give you details. But anybody else, we hope you enjoy this perspective on the season, and we'll be back with a video about the 4th Sunday in about a week or so, just ahead of Christmas Day itself. So we hope that you are enjoying this season, that it is an adventure for you, that you're able to both celebrate and reflect, and maybe we'll see you around. But in any case, we hope that you are filled with joy, and that you're able to share that joy and light with others, and maybe we can all choose grace. Happy Advent. Again, we'll see you next time.